all of the signals worked as designed. We've also confirmed that all signage and pavement markings at Rice Avenue regarding the railroad, talking about in-pavement markings that would indicate the railroad presence, the signs that would say things like do not stop on tracks, also a round lollipop sign that has a crossbuck on it that says RR. All of those signage and markings are within federal standards. We're continuing to document the damage of the truck and the trailer. I know there's been a lot of aerial video footage of the truck as well as the trains, but the truck was not fire damaged at all. The truck itself was not fire damaged. The trailer, of course, was completely consumed by fire, but the truck itself was only damaged by impact damage, severely crushed. Now, yesterday we told you that we were downloading and trying to analyze the event data recorder, and so we've got some preliminary information for you right now. Preliminary information would tell us that the horn, the train horn, sounded 12 seconds before impact. The throttle position of the train was moved to idle 11 seconds prior to impact, and the train was placed into emergency braking 8 seconds prior to impact. Speeds. At the time of emergency braking, at the time that the emergency brake was applied, the train was doing 64 miles per hour, which is certainly under the 79 mile an hour speed limit for that section of track. And at the time of the collision, we're showing it as being 56 miles per hour. Now, I do want to emphasize that this is preliminary information. This is very preliminary. I would not be surprised if these values changed by the end of the investigation, if these values changed by 1 or 2 miles per hour. But this is from our initial readout. There are actually 2 event data recorders, one on the forward car and one on the trailing locomotive. And so we're just trying to synchronize those 2 recorders. But this is preliminary. We have confidence that we are pretty darn close, but if they change by 1 miles per hour, that would not surprise me. But they will undergo extensive analysis in our laboratories in Washington, D.C. So let me describe to you the forward-facing video camera. I would say that this is good quality video. It's color, but of course the outside conditions, it's dark outside, so therefore there's not a lot of contrast between the colors, but nevertheless it is a color video. As the train is moving down the track, so the train of course is moving in this direction. So as the train is moving this direction, the camera shows traffic moving up and down East 5th Street. So we can see the headlights and the taillights of traffic on East 5th Street. As the train approaches this grade crossing, we can see lights that if you continue to watch those lights on the track, those lights end up being the vehicle that was on the track. So we can see those lights, the headlights, and we can also see traffic moving up and down, traversing the South Rice Street grade crossing. So we see traffic, vehicular traffic, going up and down, back and forth on 5th, as well as up and down South Rice. We can see that the grade crossing arms come down. We can see them flashing. The object that ends up being the the truck, the accident truck, the headlights were on, the emergency flashers were on, and the driver's door was open. So let me show you how this was positioned on the track. So we have, of course, two rails. We have a rail here and a rail here. So for the purpose of discussion, I'll refer to this lower rail as the southern rail, and I'll call this one the northern rail. The truck was straddling this southern rail. When I say straddling, I mean that the driver's side tires, both front and back tires.
Passengers.
I'm sorry, thank you, Robert. The passenger side tires were on the side of the rails. They were between the rails. The driver's side tires were outside of the rails. So basically we've got a rail right here. That's the southern rail. And then we've got the vehicle that's on top of that rail. Meanwhile, the other rail is here. So it's straddling this particular rail. Both tires inside the gauge of the track, this inside part of the track, and the other two outside the gauge of the track. The vehicle is facing the train, basically, but it is canted slightly at an angle. It's not completely straight toward the train, but it's canted at an angle slightly. The trailer appears to be completely on the southern end of the southern rail. In other words, it does not appear to be straddling the rail at all. Anything else on that I should cover?
No, sir.
Good, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the people involved in the collision. The engineer is 62 years old. He has 42 years of experience, and he is #1 on the Metrolink seniority list. He received his biannual certification in June of 2014, and he's qualified on all of the Metrolink lines. The student engineer is 31 years old. He's just about to complete his 1 year of on-the-job training that's required to become fully certified as an engineer, and he was operating the train at the time of the collision, at the time of the event. In other words, he had been operating the train that morning up to the point of putting it into emergency braking. The conductor is 58 years old, and he has 24 years of experience. Sorry, he has 25 years of experience. The driver of the truck holds an Arizona driver's license with a CDL endorsement for Class A. Basically, that means that he's qualified to operate large trucks, 18-wheeler type of trucks, even though this vehicle was not an 18-wheeler, but he had those qualifications. This license was issued in 2013. He's been employed by Harvest Management LLC since November of 2002, and he usually drives the same vehicle on a daily basis. His job is to service farm equipment. He was scheduled to be in the Oxnard area for about 6 weeks, and according to his son, he was not familiar with the area. Among other things, We will obtain his cell phone records. We'll determine if he may have been using some sort of electronic mapping device for navigation. Now, our survival factors group has interviewed 20 firefighters from 7 different units. And what they're doing is they are developing, in addition to other things, they are developing a timeline of the emergency response. And they will also begin a detailed examination of the rail cars. They will do that tomorrow. They thought initially they would do it today, but they wanted to get the interviews done yesterday because, as we know, people's memories of things fades or changes, so we thought it would be best to conduct the interviews as soon as we could. So we did the interviews yesterday and today, and we will be doing the rail car surveys beginning tomorrow. But the cursory look at the ROTM CEM cars, crash energy management cars, reveals very little crush damage. A more detailed examination of the inner workings of the crash energy absorbing equipment will be done, but we'll have to move the rail cars to a maintenance shop in Los Angeles to remove certain panels. So that will be looked at very carefully. We're interviewing passengers. Those are in progress as we speak. And the things that we want to learn from the passengers would be the extent of their injuries, how they evacuated the train, and how they were medically treated. Motor carrier factors. One of our investigators today traveled to Somerton, Arizona, to visit the headquarters of Harvest Management LLC, and they have been met by representatives from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and they are today interviewing management of the company. They're looking at the driver's logs, looking at the maintenance procedures, the safety culture of the organization, and also examining an exemplar vehicle. We're also following up with interviews. We've heard from 2 witnesses, and that's the value of getting out this email address. We've set up an email address for witnesses to contact us so we can follow up with them, and that email address is witness@ntsb.gov. This will be our last on-scene press briefing. Future information will come out of NTSB's headquarters in Washington, D.C. And I want to emphasize that although this is our last on-scene press briefing, by all means the investigation will continue. This is not by any means the ending of the investigation. In fact, investigative activities will continue on scene throughout the weekend to collect factual information. And really the plan is that when our investigators leave Oxnard, we either want to have the information that we need or have a plan for coming up for the information that we don't have. So throughout the investigation, what we will be doing is constructing a very detailed timeline. We'll use several data sources. Certainly the recorders will be valuable, the event data recorders, the video recorders, but the interviews will be important, emergency response logs, all of that will be important to help us paint a very detailed picture of the facts, circumstances, and conditions surrounding this accident. So I'll be glad to take questions. What I'd like for you to do, as we've done in the past, if you would kindly raise your hands, I'll call on you and state your name and your outlet. So any questions? Back here in the back. Yes, sir.
Hal Eisman, Fox 11. The attorney for the truck driver has said that what the driver did was he turned onto that area you got morphine to the west, thinking it was an asphalt road, and then ended up finding out it was the tracks, and then he couldn't get off of the rail of the track, and that's when he left that vehicle. From what I'm hearing you say now, is this consistent with that story?
So really, just to reiterate, what we believe at this point would be the accident sequence would be that the driver of the truck was proceeding south on Rice Avenue, probably with the intent of turning right onto East 5th Street, but instead, for whatever reason, made the turn about 55 feet early onto the railroad tracks. So that's what we've been told. We will be looking at any source that we can to determine if that's the exact scenario, but that's certainly one of the things that we're looking at, is to confirm that. Yes, ma'am.
Tammy Abdullah, Associated Press. Just a point of clarification and then a follow-up and then a question. So you're saying that the truck was straddling the tracks, so it had one part of the tracks between its tires, and then the trailer was totally off the tracks. It wasn't on the tracks at all. Is that proper understanding?
The question is, I just needed some clarification on the positioning of the truck and the trailer. And so and I guess instead of saying track, because a track consists of two rails and cross ties and rocks, ballast, all that. So two of the tires, if this is the rail, and we have another rail here, got two rails. This is the truck. So there's another rail here. So the truck had two tires, two wheels, I should say, because it had actually two axles on the back. But the tires, the wheels on this side, the passenger side of the vehicle, were on one side of this south rail.
It was actually on the tracks, right?
Actually on the cross ties itself. Yes. So again, here's another rail here, straddling that southbound rail, that southern rail, and the trailer appears to be, and we're just getting this from the video, and we've got to really carefully analyze it, but it appears that the trailer is completely off of this rail.
So it's nowhere on the rail. It's totally just off of the track, off the rail, not on that.
Not on that rail at all. So it would be, the vehicle would, the truck itself would be here, whereas the trailer would be down in that section.
And you gave a timeline. You said 8 seconds prior the emergency brake was engaged with the train, and then you said that the video captures. You can see the headlights. It appears to be the truck. Just for an apples-to-apples comparison, like in terms of timing on that video, how soon before impact do you see the truck? I mean, how soon can you tell? Can you visibly see what's happening?
The question is how far down this railroad track can you actually see the lights of the truck?
Yeah, and then you say you saw the door open. Was that like at 7 seconds prior to impact?
When I say the door was open, the door was not being opened. As the full truck comes into view, the door is already open.
So at what time is that prior to impact? Was that 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds prior?
The question is how soon before the video actually records a recognizable object as being a truck. And I've watched the video twice and I've not timed it. It happens pretty fast. There are other questions. Yes, sir, there's a question here.
Yes, James Ramos with KTLA. You spoke about how there was an engineer in training and then you had the main engineer. Now, was the main engineer present while the engineer in training was operating the train? Would you know that?
Just the question is, were both engineers, the student engineer and the qualified engineer, were they both in the control cab? The answer is absolutely yes. They were both in the. They were both present in the control cab and the control compartment. They were at the as the train is coming down the track. Yeah. So the engineer, the qualified engineer, has to stay in the control compartment with the student. There's a question here.
Amy Johnson of KCBS and KCAL 9. I know that you said that you were still looking at the cars and trying to determine the injuries, but at this point, preliminarily, can you say where most of the injuries were sustained, in which car? Was it one of the older cars or the...
Can we say where most of the injuries in the train itself occurred? And we will be conducting what we'll do is we'll interview the passengers. It's not like an airline, as we know, where people have assigned seats. So we will interview passengers, see where they were seated, and then correlate that to their injury. So that will be an ongoing process to see what correlation we can come up with there. Yes, ma'am.
Bringing here at many times, could you speak toward the layout of the crossing as far as was there anything unusual, anything dangerous about that crossing?
Is there anything unusual about this crossing? And let me describe to you just sort of the layout. I mean, you see it right here. There's a sidewalk, pedestrian sidewalk here and here. You can see that on the white concrete. And I'm not saying this is unusual, but just to give you an idea. Obviously, and the sidewalk has about a 6-inch curb. We know what sidewalks look like. They have a curb. But you can't have a curb continuing, a 6-inch curb continuing across the railroad tracks because the train couldn't go through. So it tapers down. The curb tapers down to grade level. And for 20 feet, for 25 feet, it is completely flat across there. It's just down to street level. And then it tapers back up to a 6-inch curb down through there. So, so one of the things that we will be looking at is, and a key question to be answered, how could a driver believe that that was a road? And we know it's dark, and we will be looking to see if perhaps with this line right here, could that be confused with this line, and where a driver could have perceived that opening in the sidewalk as being an opening to a street. So that's one of the many things that we want to do. We want to understand what human factors could have led someone to think that this was a street. So that's not unusual. That's the way grade crossings have to be, where you have a sidewalk, but that's one of the things that we'll look at.
We'll take 2 more questions.
There's a question back here. Yes, ma'am.
Susan Monroe, KNBC. What was it specifically about this accident that led you to come out and look at it? Before you said you didn't go to all accidents.
Yeah, what got the NTSB's interest in this accident? Why did we come to this one with over 2,000 grade crossings in this country every year? About 250 of those each year have fatalities, or are fatal. Why did we come to this one? And, several factors. For one thing, just 3 weeks ago, we did go to a fatal grade crossing accident in New York where 6 people were killed. So grade crossings are very much on our mind. We thought that it was unusual that this was not the traditional grade crossing accident where a truck or a vehicle gets on the tracks right here at the grade crossing and gets stuck. We thought that it was unusual that a vehicle had turned down the track like that where it was struck. So we wanted to see that. We know that Metrolink has been using the new Rotom CEM cars. We're very interested to know how those cars would hold up in an accident. So a number of factors that we said, we need to go and look at this one. So we'll take one last question. And there's a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sherry Carlson from the Ventura County Star. When you looked at the video, you said the headlights of the truck appeared to be on, the emergency flashers appeared to be on, the door was open. Did you see the driver or anyone standing in the area or running from the area?
Did we see the driver in our video, in the video? Was he present, running, anything? The answer to that is no. We're going to spend a lot of time scrutinizing that video. We've just taken, we've looked at it today, but we will look at it, our investigators in our lab will literally look at it frame by frame, 1/32 of a second by 1/32 of a second, frame by frame, analyzing every aspect of that. I want to thank you all. Terry Williams, our public affairs officer, will come and discuss a few details as far as how we will proceed, but thank you all very much. Thank you, Terry.